As I said before, I think aquatics really helps develop you and prepare you to kind of do everything. It's up to you to realize that you can do that, I think, and take the next step. And I think in any organization, it's very easy to be labeled as a one-dimensional person and that, oh, that's our aquatics person and that's their role here. And I think we're finally starting to see people really breaking that mold and moving up. And I think you see that, the Jim Wheelers are a great example of that, moving up an organization and being a director of a large organization. And there's countless people like that as well, where they really have broken that mold and that model to say, no, hold on, we have talents that work in all sorts of different places and industries.
We can now add Cory Hilderbrand to that list as well.
Yeah, we can.
Welcome to the Association of Aquatic Professionals podcast, where we share real stories and practical ideas to help you run safer and stronger aquatic programs and facilities. I'm Daniel Peters, your host, joined today by our co-host, Kirsten Barnes. AOAP is a nonprofit dedicated to improving aquatic education, recreation, and safety through training, resources, and community. In this episode, we're talking with someone who has shaped the direction of AOAP during some of its most challenging and most innovative years, Cory Hilderbrand, AOAP Board Member and past president. We're diving into a topic that affects every aquatic leader: how to leverage support from non-aquatic supervisors, city leadership, and departments who may not fully understand what we do. Whether you work in a small municipal pool, a large competitive program, or anything in between, this conversation will give you tools to build trust, communicate value, and advocate for your staff and patrons.
Cory has been in aquatics for more than 2 decades, starting from the moment he timed his lifeguarding class to be certified the day he turned 15. His career has taken him from lakefront beaches in Washington to private clubs to leading major municipal aquatic operations in California. Today, he serves as the Deputy Director for the City of Irvine, overseeing not just aquatics, but human services, senior programming, disability services, athletics, parks, and more. That broader leadership experience has shaped the way he approaches communication, collaboration, and decision-making, especially when working with teams and supervisors outside the aquatics world. As AOAP president, Cory helped the association rebuild after the pandemic, strengthen engagement through ongoing membership meetings, and launch AOAP's mentorship program. He has spent his career growing not only facilities, but the leaders within them. Cory, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Cory, let's start with the basics. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your role with the City of Irvine and what your work looks like today?
Yeah. I grew up like a lot of people in the aquatics world, growing up swimming and hanging out around a pool. I actually started competitively swimming at 5 years old and kind of never left, tried a bunch of other sports and as forced by my parents and never really liked it. So always ended up back at the pool, and then just kind of always stayed there. I got my lifeguard certification at 15 and just kind of started slowly working my way up through the ranks, moving through community pools to beaches, back to community pools, got involved in coaching and things like that. Today, what my work looks like, it's a lot of it is working on development plans. We're building in the City of Irvine, we're building a huge park called the Great Park, which actually already has a couple hundred acres of a sports park. It's going to be about 500 acres by the time we're done. So it's a gigantic task right now. Working on policy updates, committee oversight, staff development, and then writing a lot of staff reports for various things throughout the day. So kind of a lot more administrative nowadays. I always joke if I could go back and teach swimming lessons all day long, I probably would choose that at this point. But in all seriousness, it's very challenging, and it certainly keeps me busy throughout the day and day to day.
That's awesome, Cory. For people who might not be familiar with your journey, what were some of the turning points that moved you from being the aquatics expert to overseeing these broader community-based areas?
Yeah, I think when I made the move to California from Washington in 2008, That was kind of a changing point, I think, for my career in aquatics. And up in Washington State, it was very typical that you had your hands in a lot of pots in the aquatics world. So you weren't just the aquatics director. You did all sorts of coaching things and teaching swimming lessons and things like that. When I moved down to California, it's a completely different model down here. People that run the pools are people that just run the pools. They don't have their hands in all those other pots. And doing that, it allowed me to really focus on the training and staff leadership side of things. But it also made me realize that I think I wanted more than just aquatics. So that was kind of the start of my branch out. When I was in Carlsbad, I had a great opportunity there with building a new facility again and having my hand kind of in a larger park too, although I just oversaw aquatics. And I just kind of outgrew that. And that's what landed me in Irvine. And then, from there, it just kind of kept expanding. So I started out just as the aquatic supervisor for a few years and then added arts and then started adding human services and then eventually moved back over to athletics, which is kind of more my wheelhouse, and Great Park. And, kind of history from there. It just kept going.
You talk about stepping into different roles. What was it like at the beginning when you weren't the subject expert in those matters anymore?
Yeah, I think it's always challenging. I think one thing that aquatics teaches you as a whole is to be very diverse, right? Is that I don't know that a lot of people give aquatic staff the respect that they deserve as far as their abilities. I mean, we do budgeting, we do training, we do staff leadership, we do event management, we do large event management with swim meets and water polo tournaments and pro meets and all of that stuff. So I think that side of it made it easy, is that I could step in and I was really natural and it was easy for me to lead a team. But the challenging side of it obviously was to learn the ins and outs. I had never overseen senior services before and, getting dipping my toe in the water, so to speak. Since we're talking an aquatics podcast, it was a great opportunity to really learn something completely out of my comfort zone and expand my knowledge base. And it was a really refreshing moment, I think, in my career, to realize that I have the ability, and I think we all do, to learn something new and just take the time to listen and learn and then really dive in and add your perspective to that.
Love it, Cory. Can you share one challenge that your team has been focused on recently, either in aquatics or on the human services side, and how you recognize that it needed your attention?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges is that Irvine is going through some growing pains. We're a city that, 15, 20 years ago was 100,000 people, and now we're over 330,000. We're continuing to grow, although we're not growing at the same pace that we once were. A lot of the city policies and procedures were set up as a smaller city, and we're going through a lot of growing pains right now as a larger organization of how we deal with that. One of them being fees. So the city of Irvine had a long standing tradition that we really supported our youth organizations. And through that, I mean, we did not charge them fees. We gave them every opportunity to grow and be very successful. Irvine has a long history of very outstanding sport teams. Irvine Nova Aquatics, our swim team, is one of them that's benefited from that. But as we've tried to implement fees, we've gone through some real hard struggles. That's what we're really focused on right now, is changing that mindset that we do have to charge an hourly fee for use of our facilities. In the aquatics world, we've been really successful about getting that through, but the athletics side has taken some more time. We've actually been working on switching the way that we do things for the last 7 years now, and we're finally right there at the cusp. But it's been very challenging, and it's been something that we all realized that we needed to do, and we were just continuing to try and push that through. It's making sure that we're taking a step back, really communicating, and then taking that slower approach, moving it forward eventually through council to get approval.
It's interesting because many aquatic professionals eventually work with the different departments, with including finance, HR, even public works for other side jobs within the organization. So
Mhm.
those don't speak to the aquatics side of things. So you bringing that experience kind of helps mirror that learning curve.
Yeah, absolutely. As I said before, I think aquatics really helps develop you and prepare you to kind of do everything. It's up to you to realize that you can do that, I think, and take the next step. And I think in any organization, it's very easy to be labeled as a one-dimensional person, and that, oh, that's our aquatics person, and that's their role here. And I think we're finally starting to see people really breaking that mold and moving up. And I think you see that, the Jim Wheelers are a great example of that, moving up an organization and being a director of a large organization. And there's countless people like that as well, where they really have broken that mold and that model to say, no, hold on, we have talents that work in all sorts of different places and industries.
We can now add Cory Hilderbrand to that list as well.
Yeah, we can.
All right, let's move into the heart of today's topic. When you think about your career, what are the key steps to successfully gaining support from supervisors and leaders who don't have that aquatic background?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things is just providing them opportunities and hands-on experience. I know when I started in the city of Irvine, my direct supervisor did not have any aquatics background at all. And one of the first things that we did is we actually had her take an aquatic facility operator course with Julene, ironically, helped her, and she had to kind of dig in her heels and really learn. And it's so funny because we take things for granted, right? We're like, oh, AFO, it's an easy course. It's old news. We can go in and just take it. But someone that didn't have any aquatics experience, it was eye-opening for her to understand all of the nuances with water chemistry and pumps and all these different aspects that a lot of people don't even think of, that we deal with on a day-to-day basis. And we don't think anything of it a lot of times. So that was a huge step. Also, having her attend lifeguard class. We didn't actually have her take it, but we had her attend and watch and see all of the training. And then the last thing that we did is I had her attend AOAP with me, and she came and went to a lot of the sessions, and it was a really good eye-opening experience. She attended a lot of sessions on drowning prevention and things like that, things that the city has initiatives on, so that she could bring that back. But that really helped solidify, I think, her willingness to really fight for us and make sure that we had what we needed. And then I had her on my side when we would go talk to the director or our commissions or council, even moving forward, which it's a tremendous help. So I think just getting them involved and inviting them to your staff meetings and having them understand, and then actually asking them to get in the pool if they will, or at least watch, is a huge step in the right direction for them to understand all the ins and outs.
I love that she was willing to do that. That's a blessing when you look back on that spot in your career. So beyond that, Cory, what are some of the communication strategies that have worked best for you when you're trying to explain these very specific aquatics needs and risks and priorities to the people who don't understand aquatics?
Yeah, I think one of the best ways to communicate is to show it like down on paper and show a flow chart, not only having your org chart of your organization and how all of the tasks are divvied up amongst your team, but also have a flow chart for how all of those jobs get done and what it takes to get them done. I think that a lot of times we get asked in our organization all the time, like, why does it take 250 lifeguards to run 2 aquatic facilities? One of them has 3 pools, so it's a big aquatic facility, but I don't think there's a lot of understanding to how many duties they do throughout a day. And we're implementing a new employee management software system right now. And the company that we're working with is just like, they work like 9 different jobs a day. And we kind of laugh and go, they don't just work 9 different jobs a day. They might do that 20 times throughout the day, rotating through the different tasks. It's not just, they don't just sit in a lifeguard chair for 6 hours when we're there. They might be cleaning toilets. They might be teaching swimming lessons. They might be working at the front counter. So really putting that down and demonstrating that through a flow chart is the really good way, I think, to get people to understand what that takes and what those priorities are on a day-to-day basis.
Was there anything early that you tried to show to leadership when you first made that transition that maybe didn't work out, that you had to adjust and kind of show them through a different lens?
Well, I think for me personally, I'll take this kind of two ways. For me personally, something that I learned that didn't work out was kind of the standard up in Washington State, I think, which I think it's changing now. But that was being a jack of all trades does not necessarily make you a better leader, and a better aquatic supervisor. I think at the time I was the aquatics director. I oversaw the locker rooms. I was the head coach of the master's program. I coached the age group program. I also coached high school on the side, and I had my own private swimming lesson company that I taught. It was great. I did really well, and I made a lot of money at it, but I don't think that I was probably the best that I could be at any of those things because I just had too much going on. So I think that's one of my key takeaways. And I think that's one of the things that we focus on right now as a team is that it's good to be diverse and it's good to understand, but we do need to break up the job duties. We need someone to concentrate on the Learn to Swim program and building the Learn to Swim program and making sure that's successful. We need someone to focus on the training of our staff and being responsible for that to make sure that that's being done correctly. So that's really what we've had to adjust over the time is it was kind of an all hands on deck and everybody just kind of did a little bit of everything. And now we've really divided up and made specific tasks. And then of course we come together, staff training and things like that. It's all hands on deck when needed. But for the most part, we have individualized focus areas for the team, and we've been a lot more successful at that.
Yeah, the industry has certainly changed over the last 25 years in the way that we approach aquatics and also the way that we approach aquatics budgets. Cory, you've worked
Mhm.
for some public agencies that put a big emphasis on budgets. How did you learn to present aquatics in a way that really resonates with finance and other administrators?
Yeah, I think looking at our facilities as kind of their own enterprise, which is a different way than a lot of public agencies look at things. And I think that came from working in private where we had to make money. We had to produce revenue. We had to make things work. So coming in from that approach where you're really taking a hard look at the revenue that you can produce with the staff that you have on hand and making sure that those numbers balance out has made my life a lot easier over the years. And in fact, right now, as we go through some tougher times and where budgets are more stringently looked at and things like that, one of the biggest wins that we have is when we show that we're offsetting all of our operational costs and our staffing costs. Because then when you're asked to cut programs, you're also losing a ton of revenue. So if you lose more revenue than what you're cutting, you kind of scratch your head and go, well, that doesn't make sense. We can't cut that program. So it's also kind of a safety net too at the same time. I think the other side is being very proactive with your budgets, with your maintenance side of things and making sure that you're accounting for things, 1, 2, 5, 10 years out and putting those in the budget so that they're not surprises when you get there. That's also very, very helpful because then you know what you need to do and how much money you need to make to offset those costs as well.
What about for those aquatic professionals who may feel unheard by their leadership? What are some of the first steps to start shifting that dynamic?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is that I would suggest is probably creating a format that works for them, that gives them an opportunity to share. And whether that's during their one-on-ones with their supervisor or whether that's setting up a routine presentation at their commission meetings. In Irvine, we're blessed that we have a great structure in the city of Irvine, and that's goes all the way back to like the late 70s. First built the aquatic center, they set up a committee that is the Irvine Aquatics Advisory Committee. And this committee is made up of our youth nonprofits that have a say and a buy-in to our schedule. And not only, some would say that's very challenging, which at times it is because they want their space and they want to guarantee that. But where it's very successful and where it's very helpful is that they really can share their experience and help us when we need to advocate for things. So, for instance, when we were looking at building a new facility or a new pool at Woollet, adding a 50-meter pool, we utilized those groups to go and speak on behalf of the aquatics community. So it wasn't just staff delivering the message, it was the very people that are utilizing the facility and have all of the people. And I view aquatics as this big circle, right? You start out at 6 months old learning to swim, you go through the Learn to Swim program, you enter one of the aquatic sports, regardless of what it is, whether it's diving, artistic swimming, competitive swimming, water polo, underwater hockey. We have all sorts of things. You participate in that, and then you can participate in master's programs. And then a lot of times, well, water aerobics and water therapy and things like that. And it just comes to this full circle. So when you have entities like that that can go to bat for you, they can see the big picture, and they can share their stories and how we all work together as one unit. And it's very unique. There aren't a lot of places that have that. You can't say the same thing for a soccer organization. That's a big difference. So I think figuring that out. And then I also think being very honest with your leadership too, of sharing both your successes and your failures too, of what you've learned from and what you've done wrong and how you'll change it in the future helps build that trust as well. Because if you're just always sharing what you do good, we don't all just do good all the time, right? We all have areas of weaknesses, and we have areas that things that we try that don't work. And I think it's important to share that and then share why it didn't work and what you're going to do to change.
Absolutely. I think that grassroots support is such a key piece of leveraging what our needs are and telling our
Mhm.
story. And rec departments as a whole do a good job, but we don't always do a good job finding those advocates for aquatics specifically. A lot of what we're advocating for in our communities, and you guys do a great job of this, is making our programs safer or making just water safety in general more accessible to our communities. How does leveraging support from those non aquatic leaders connect to that broader goal of water safety and program accessibility?
Yeah, I think getting their support, and whether it be elected officials or whether it be nonprofit organizations out there, what that does is that provides access, right? It opens up the door to financial opportunities for you, marketing opportunities for you, whether it's co-branding or co-marketing, and also other connections too. I think that's how you really meet other people and share what you're doing. That's how we've ended up doing a lot of work with Jasper Ray Foundation and through the Orange County Drowning Prevention Task Force, and made a lot of those connections. We've done a lot of work with Bill Amelia, and Drennan Streams Foundation moving forwards. All of that, by making those connections and tying them together, you never really know who you're going to run into, and who's going to really help you get to that next level. And I'll use an example. Our mayor of our city, his wife is very active. She's a pediatrician. She's very active in the preventable death of children. And I did not know this, but way back when they were able to pass the seatbelt law and the car seat law in the state of California moving forward. And now her big initiative is drowning prevention. And making that connection, I never would have made that. We wouldn't have found each other if I wasn't trying to push harder for drowning prevention activity within the city and things like that. And she found out and reached out, and we made a connection. This was before he was actually mayor, although they've been involved with the city for a long time. But now I would say we're kind of partners in crime and getting things done. And she's the one that really started the life jacket program that we run, a little bit of a different format, and then we changed it and adapted it to our city to make it work for us. So that's an example of, when you continue to open those doors of those non-aquatic people, sometimes you're never sure what you're going to get on the other side, and many times, more often than not, it's very beneficial to your program.
To be able to make that connection and then what it's been able to turn into,
Yeah.
not knowing. So, stepping back just a little bit, between your AOAP leadership, your city experience, and your mentorship work, what have you learned about leadership that applies to anyone running an aquatic facility?
I think that I've learned that communication is the most important tool that we have. I think that as younger aquatic professionals, a lot of times we feel like we shouldn't share all the information that we have. And I think there's two sides to that. There's the side that we're protecting them and we don't want them to know what might hurt them. I think there's the side that we don't want them to be better than us, so we're afraid of that. And then sometimes it's just the unsure of where that line is. And I think that if there's anything that I would suggest, is that where that line is only highly confidential information. Other than that, everything should be communicated and shared, because it makes us all better, and it makes us all better as a team. And I also think that as a leader, it makes all of your team members trust you a lot more when you're open and honest with what's going on.
Absolutely. You know, that's a good point. When you share a lot of information, sometimes it can create uncertainty or draw the focus other places. How do you keep your team focused on safety and education? When budgets are tight or when you're going through leadership changes, how do you keep them on track?
Yeah, I think we've created a document, which is kind of, I guess, a procedural document that is our safety standard, and it goes over our level of training that's expected. We use StarGuard Elite as our training organization. We have our audits to them, but the biggest thing is that there's never any substitute for the safety aspect and the training side of things. So even as our budgets get tight, if we're asked to cut, that is not that's a non-negotiable for us. So we're not going to sacrifice our training hours and our in-service trainings and our team meetings in order to save money. We will cut programs first, which might sound harsh, but without the safety side of it, and in the event that something were to happen, we're going to be cutting those programs anyway, more so than we would if we make slight cuts to adjust to make sure that we're putting our staff and our team through the appropriate amount of training. So I think that's the biggest thing, is just setting that standard and saying, if anything, we're only going to make that standard even higher, but we're never going to go below this bar.
It's easy to set that standard within your team, Cory. Did you have to work hard to set that standard kind of within the department and within the city too?
Yeah, and it's interesting that you asked that, Kirsten, because I think the easy thing to slash in budgets always is training, right? And they see training across the board. And we've had it happen in our organization where they're like, oh, this everybody has, I don't know, 10% of their budget in training. We're going to cut it down to 4%. And we've had that cut, and I get the budget back and say, well, I'm sorry, we can't cut that. That's not something that we can do. We have to have the certain amount of hours. So that educational piece has been, this is our required amount of training that we have to have in order to keep this facility safe. And I've been to this point very successful at getting that message across, and we've always gotten that funding back way or another.
It's unfortunate the people kind of making those decisions are the people who don't fully understand the stakes that come with some of those cuts. So, is there any advice you would be able to give to an aquatic professional trying to advocate for that and explaining that the staffing and training and just some of the capital repairs to old facilities are kind of detrimental to how we're able to successfully run?
Right. Yeah. I mean, you can always go the harsh way, right? And you can show some of the settlements and things when incidents have happened. And that's, I think sometimes it's a little backhanded going to that. So I think it's almost better just to sit down and say, look, this is our certifying agency, whether it's Red Cross, Ellis, Stargard, anybody else. These are the amount of hours that are required. This is what the standard is using the Aquatic Model Health Code for training and in-services. And I think that's a good starting point, because you have something to fall back on and look at. And it's, if you want to go above and beyond that, then you're going to have to come up with your reasoning as to why. And some of us have really good reasoning, right? We have several Aflex inflatables in the summertime. We have to do specialized training on how to set up the inflatables, how to guard the inflatables, where are the areas that are heightened risk, and how to take them down. That's something that we have to train. So that's above and beyond just the standard training. And you can use diving boards, water slides, all sorts of things as background that are above and beyond probably what the Model Aquatic Health Code is going to call out. But those are all things that I think you can negotiate. We even talk about safety for the large events that we have when we host USA Swimming Nationals or USA Water Polo Junior Olympics, and what our safety standards are during those. Those are a little bit easier because they pay for all the staff, so it's a little bit easier to work on, but it still is something that we utilize to go over and talk about setups and things like that, and all the intricacies of moving equipment and everything around, and what that requires. Because I will say that one of my biggest fears isn't necessarily something happening while the pool's being actively used. It's when the pool's being switched over, and we have staff doing 1,000 things, but watching the water.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. You've been involved with AOAP for a long time, Cory, and it gives you an opportunity to meet people from all different types of organization. This is your second trip through the presidential series, right?
Yes.
How has your time as part of the board at AOAP shaped your leadership approach just in your day to day work?
Yeah, I think what AOAP has taught me and has enabled me to do is to become a bigger thinker. And to think outside the box and more broad. I say that because I think AOAP being a national organization, you have to think outside of your local area and what everybody needs and what will benefit everybody. And I think that's the biggest takeaway that I've learned from AOAP, and it's been an absolute gift to me to be able to lead that and do some of the things we've done. And I know you mentioned a few of the things that we were lucky enough to accomplish. And I think that not just throwing ideas out there, but actually doing them and following through and making it happen and seeing it through and seeing it grow is one of the things that I'm most proud of, is that a lot of the initiatives that were started have just completely blown up and are continuing to grow to this day, which I think is really neat to see. And it's makes me feel really good about what we've been able to do. And I think the other side is don't just say it, do it. Like if you think that you can get something done, and you think it's going to be beneficial, figure out how to make that work. And I will, a little bit, I will throw this out there because we miss him greatly, but I will say that my partner in crime was Craig Murphy, and we'll miss him, but we're going to continue on. But he was probably the biggest person behind me saying, keep going. We can do this. Let's do it. And he was kind of my silent partner, I would say. And a lot of people don't know that he was always there kind of pushing me along and encouraging.
I feel like Craig was one of those guys behind the scenes who was really giving everybody the nudge in the right direction.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And from you guys that were involved in a long time to even some of the newer members like myself. So, in all areas, which made him such a great person. So, all right. Just to finish up, with every guest we do a lightning round where we ask them just a couple of questions. What is one small change any aquatic facility could make this month to be safer?
I think starting a life jacket loaner program during their recreation swim hours. I think it's such an easy thing that we as aquatic industry don't do as a whole. That should be a standard at every single pool.
Cory, what's a training tool or resource that you think every aquatic professional should know about?
Well, I'm gonna, of course, pump AOAP. I truly do believe it is AOAP with all of the training courses and things that are available on there. I think it is an absolute hidden gem and such a deal for the membership rates that we charge.
I think that's a great answer.
Other than the amazing AOAP, what is your favorite part of working in aquatics?
I would say the day-to-day challenge. There's always something new every single day. No day is the same. So I think just the ever-changing environment, and it keeps you on your toes all the time.
And finally, if you could give your younger aquatic professional self one piece of advice, what would it be?
I would say don't focus on the outcome so much. Focus on doing the right thing, being a good leader, and just overall being a good person.
Those are great answers. Cory, thank you so much for sharing your experience and insights with the AOAP community. Your journey from aquatic specialist to community service leader offers valuable lessons to anyone trying to build trust, gain support, and lead teams both on and beyond the pool deck. For our listeners, we'll link Cory's work, AOAP's mentorship program, and other related resources in the show notes. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with another aquatic professional and keep the conversation going. Learn more about AOAP's training, conferences, and drowning prevention resources. Visit aquaticpros.org. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on AOAP Discussions from the Deep End podcast, a podcast for aquatic professionals by aquatic professionals.